Welcome to RECO12. My name is Justin, and I am a child of an all-powerful and all-loving God and a recovering addict, and am blessed to be the host of this meeting and podcast. RECO12 is an organization with the mission of learning and sharing the similarities of addictions of all kinds, and gaining and sharing tools and hope from others who are walking a similar path. We come together from all places, faiths, and backgrounds to gain tools and hope from others who are walking this same path. Speakers from our past meetings have represented a lot of fellowships, addictions, and afflictions, and we look forward to continuing to add to the diversity of speakers and backgrounds. Today's speaker for the 156th meeting is Lenette M., whose topic will be Living Step 10, and we'll get to her talk in the Q&A afterwards in just a minute. First, a little bit of business. Earlier this month, we launched a new service in the growing RECO12 family of recovery resources. It is another recovery meeting podcast called RECO12 Shares. RECO12 Shares is an open to anyone, anytime, shares only, unaffiliated 12-step meeting. All are welcome to record a solution-based share that is uploaded to be part of a short 20-minute recorded recovery meeting available in podcast format anytime, anywhere. To listen to any of the previous 8 meetings that are already uploaded, and there will be several more that will be coming up in the next couple of weeks, and to learn more and to record a share of your own, please visit RECO12.com/shares, or click on the links in the show notes or chat of the live meeting that will be up here in a few minutes. There are also a couple of other RECO12 family of recovery resources on the horizon that I'm super excited about. Your donations and subscriptions are making this all possible, as there are costs to all of them. Speaking of that, RECO12 is a self-supporting service, and we appreciate your help in keeping us working our Step 12 in this manner. We gratefully accept one-time contributions through PayPal and Venmo through the links in the chat and show notes that'll be up here in a few minutes. We have also started a new monthly subscription program called RECO12 Spearheads. To join in and help support these cool projects, please consider donating at RECO12.com/support, or click on the links that will be in the show notes and the chat. We look forward each week to receiving from the light reflected from our speakers. That light inspires hope, meaning, worth, and growth in us, the listening audience. Now I'll introduce our guest speaker for today, another RECO12 first-time speaker, Lenette M. Super excited about this. Now here's a little bit about her. Lenette came to SLAA back in 2014. She had gone through a divorce, and her addiction really surfaced shortly thereafter. How her sex and love addiction shows up is that she feels she must be validated and chosen. She ripped through people's lives and hurt many, only thinking of herself. Lenette's codependency also shows up when in a relationship. This looks like her micromanaging and pretty much giving up her life for her partner. She started her steps for the first time in 2014 with a sponsor when she got through step 2, and then left because she felt anger about and couldn't figure out a higher power and couldn't believe that a God or something bigger than her actually loved her. Because if it did, why was she an addict and suffering? I totally identify with that. After several starts and stops, she finally got a big book sponsor and worked through all of the steps and started sponsoring others. As one of the results, she has found that she is loved and lovable. Even if she is not in a relationship, Lenette now loves the 12 steps and finds that when she is taking on a sponsee and taking them through them, it still moves her to tears. She really loves step 10, as it can mean cleaning the slate each night and starting anew the next day. Lenette, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Hi, my name is Lenette, and I'm a sex and love codependency addict. I'm recovering one day at a time in this program. And I would like to thank Justin and his master gardener for creating this beautiful and safe space for us to all come together to share, support one another on our journey of recovery. I'm feeling grateful and blessed to be here today to share my experience, strength, and hope, and mainly the solution. And I want to get honest, because that's what we do in this program and what it has taught me. I'm extremely nervous. And in the past, my addict that lives in my mind has been nonstop chattering this whole week, telling me that I don't deserve to be here. What I have to say isn't important. And I came very close to wanting to cancel because of fear, which is one of my character defects. This has been what the majority of my life has been like. I've lived my life being afraid and not wanting to be seen that isn't in a healthy way. Unhealthy, I want all the attention. But now I know that I do belong here and I do matter. But I know that if my message resonates with just one person, then my work is done here. So I'd like to take a minute to qualify now. Like I said, I'm a sex, love, codependent addict. How my addiction shows up is when I'm single, I want to be chosen, validated, and I want control. I was dishonest, manipulating, and selfish. I used people and caused a lot of hurt, not only to myself, but to others. And when I get into a partnership, I want to micromanage. I will give up my interest because you become my higher power. And I want you to do the same for me. I become completely enmeshed with you and feel anxious when you are away from me. And when your energy shifts, I believe you're going to leave me. What I love is the big book. My first time going through the steps, I never used the big book. Coming around this time, we used the big book with the WhatsApp group I'm in. So I want to just do page 82 in the big book. This always seems to sum it up for me on how I showed up in relationships. The alcoholic, and we can replace alcoholic, just addict. So the addict is like a tornado roaring his way through the lives of others. Hearts are broken. Sweet relationships are dead. Affections have uprooted. Selfish and inconsiderate habits have kept the home in turmoil. We feel a man is unthinking when he says that sobriety is enough. He's like the farmer who came out of his cyclone cellar to find his home ruined. To his wife, he remarked, "Don't see anything the matter here, Ma. Ain't it grand? The wind stopped blowing." That one always just hits me hard because of the damage that I did to so many people in my life. But I have spent my whole life looking outward to fill the void I have felt since a little girl. My parents both have had their own trauma, and I spent my childhood feeling unseen and didn't feel safe. I was surrounded by chaos and felt as if I had to walk on eggshells. As I grew into a young woman, I figured out ways to get the attention I so desperately craved. I've been acting out sexually at a very young age. I was a serial dater and relationship jumper, believing that the next person would provide relief or solution to my pain. I used people to get high and to numb out. And I came to the rooms of SLAA back in 2014 when I was living in Los Angeles after my first divorce. And I was directed there by many of my friends who were in recovery in another program. I was told to look up the SLAA and read the characteristics. And actually, I would like to take a minute to read them to you. So these are the 12 characteristics of sex and love addiction. Number one, having few healthy boundaries, we become sexually involved with or emotionally attached to people without knowing them. 2, fearing abandonment and loneliness, we stay in and return to painful, destructive relationships, concealing our dependency needs from ourselves and others, growing more isolated and alienated from friends and loved ones, ourselves and God. 3, fearing emotional and or sexual deprivation, we compulsively pursue and involve ourselves in one relationship after another, sometimes having more than one sexual or emotional liaison at a time. 4, we confuse love and neediness, physical and sexual attraction, pity, and or the need to rescue or be rescued. 5, we feel empty and incomplete when we are alone. Even though we fear intimacy and commitment, we continually search for relationships and sexual contacts. 6, we sexualize stress, guilt, loneliness, anger, shame, fear, and envy. We use sex or emotional dependence as substitutes for nurturing care and support. 7, we use sex and emotional involvement to manipulate and control others. 8, we become immobilized or seriously distracted by romantic or sexual obsessions or fantasies. 9, we avoid responsibility for ourselves by attaching ourselves to people who are emotionally unavailable. Let's see. 10, we stay enslaved to emotional dependency, romantic intrigue, or compulsive sexual activities. 11, to avoid feeling vulnerable, we may retreat from all intimate involvement, mistaking sexual and emotional anorexia for recovery. And 12, we assign magical qualities to others. We idealize and pursue them, then blame them for not fulfilling our fantasies and expectations. I remember reading these and having that feeling of, this is me. I have been every single person in those 12 characteristics. And what I do know is if I don't work my program, I can fall back into any of those. And I have. I've had some setbacks in my recovery. The beauty of it is now I have tools and I have the step work. I have God and I have fellows and meetings that I can attend to get myself, straightened back out again. So when I attended my first meeting, I immediately felt like I belonged there. I started attending meetings, found a sponsor, and started my step work. When I got to step 2, there was resistance on my part. I found myself thinking, how is there a God? Why would he have made me this way? All the suffering I'd endured, the childhood trauma, being bullied, having thoughts of suicide since the age of 12, and this addiction that rules my life. This was the first time I had realized how I didn't have a spiritual foundation and didn't believe in God or that he could restore me to sanity. So I stopped doing my step work and continued to just attend meetings. I eventually stepped away and continued to live in my addiction, but in my eyes, it wasn't as bad as it used to be. In 2017, I remarried and located my son and myself to another state after only knowing this man for 2 months. The marriage lasted for 2 years, and when we divorced, I retreated and did work on myself, which wasn't 12-step work. I didn't run to the dating apps. I was celibate and was proud of myself for being so strong. Once I did start exploring dating, all the characteristics came back front and center. I was running on self-will. This time around, I realized I needed God. In 2021, I went back to the rooms, which at the time were either phone meetings or Zoom because of the whole COVID thing. Within 3 weeks of getting back into meetings, I was able to connect with the sponsor. She connected me with the WhatsApp group, Spiritual Gangsters, and from there, my recovery began. I can honestly say I had no idea the work or commitment it would take to work the steps. This time around, I was ready and wanted a solution to the patterns that had made my life unmanageable. I had to get real and honest, and it was not something I was used to doing. And what I realized was, once you get to the 12th step, that just isn't it. You're not done with the work. You get to work them every single day. And I know majority of us that are here on this podcast today have worked the steps, or maybe we're curious about working the steps. So I just wanted to kind of go over the steps. Once we get through our 12 steps, it doesn't end there. We still continue to work them every day. So step 1 is we continue to admit that we're powerless over our addiction. Step 2, we believe that a power greater than ourselves has restored us to sanity. 3, we wake every day and continue to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand him. 4, we will make a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves if needed. 5, admit to God, to ourselves, and another human the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, be entirely ready to have God remove all of these defects of character. And this is an everyday thing. 7, humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings. 8, continue to make amends if necessary. 9, make those amends to others we have harmed or make a living amends. 10, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were promptly wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us to carry that out. And 12, paying it forward to others, and that looks like sponsorship and service. So with that, I'd love to touch on step 10. For me, step 10 is reflecting on the day and the evening and taking inventory of how I showed up for my life that day. Also, the beauty of it is we can do a spot inventory if there is something that needs immediate attention. So for me, it just takes work and honesty to hold yourself accountable for your thoughts and behavior, not only to yourself, but to others and to God. Being able to ask ourselves, were we resentful today? Were we only thinking of ourselves most of the time? This helps us to see where we are all still allowing ourselves to run the show. I look forward to doing my 10th step. I'm getting to see where I'm relying on myself or where I have been selfish or self-seeking, taking that review and inventory of my day and handing it over to God. My character defects are still there and will always be. Hold on just a minute. It is my responsibility to pause throughout my day and take inventory and accountability. I have 2 ways to work my 10th step. I put pen to paper and make 2 columns. The left side I label self-will, and the right side is God's will. On my left column is where my character defects go. These are from my 4th step and were defects that came up over and over again. Mine tend to be resentment, fear of judgment, self-pity, self-seeking, and blaming. And on the right side is where God's will goes. And this is the opposite of my character defects, which was in my 5th column of how I could set matters straight or what should I have done instead. When I have these 2 columns, side by side. I see how I can be loving and tolerant of another in a situation, and it aligns me with God. I also have a 12-step app on my phone and use that during the day to do a spot inventory or to keep track of a character defect that surfaced during the day. Because sometimes at night, when I'm getting ready to do my 10th step, things leave me and I don't always remember that if I might have been, unkind to somebody or impatient or judgment or whatever comes up. So I usually just pop it in into my app. And I just want to also give an example of what it can look like when I'm not in God's will and how the 10th step helps. I'll give an example at work last week. The week before, I had been speaking to a friend at work about a leadership person at my work. And I know what I should have done. I should have gone to God first, and I should have gone to the person first. But I decided to talk to the friend first about it, and someone else overheard. And that vicious cycle, the other person was told. So she did approach me. And then I felt that feeling of, why did I do that? I know better feeling. I didn't beat myself up. Her and I had a great conversation. And then I was able to actually make an amends to her. We went and had a little bit of private time, and I was able to just tell her, I really want to thank you for approaching me and for being open. And I want to apologize for not coming to you. And I will do that going forward. And she was on my 10th step that night, of just the reminder of just how easy it is to work this program, but how easy it is too to fall back into old ways of thinking that you know best, or gossiping, or just not being in alignment with yourself and God. So that's just a little bit of an example. And so also when moments like that happen, I always like to do what the big book says on page 86. Be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection, for that would diminish our usefulness to others. After making our review, we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. We don't shame or beat ourselves up anymore. We simply hand it over to God. Being honest was something I was not used to. With step 10, I'm no longer keeping secrets that would derail my program. I say program versus recovery because I never know what the next day will bring forward. I do know that I have tools in God to rest upon versus my self-will. I just want to finish up with page 84 from the big book. This is not an overnight matter. It must continue for our lifetime. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. We discuss them with someone immediately and make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Love and tolerance of others is our code. With that being said, that is all that I have to share today. I'm just grateful to be here. Without this program, I know that my life would be in complete chaos like it used to be. I still, like I said, have setbacks, but the beauty of it is I've learned how to be honest. I've learned how to actually rely on God and to also get support from others, because I used to be the person that would want to just do it myself and not be honest. And even when I do have setbacks, I do my 10th step, and sometimes I do sleep on it because my addict wants to tell me that it's okay that I did XYZ when I know it's not okay that I did those things. And I will wake up the next morning and reach out to a fellow. And it takes time to get into the groove of your program and to continue to show up in a way that is in alignment with how you want to be in integrity. And so thank you so much for letting me share.
Thank you so much, Lenette. I really appreciate that. I want to dig a little bit deeper before we jump into the regular Q&A here. One of the things you brought up, you said, hey, I call it program versus recovery because I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. Can you kind of dig on that and say, hey, what is, to you, in your experience, what is the difference between program and recovery, and how do you delineate that?
So for me, I know in like being a sex and love addict, so my head gets ahead of my words, so I apologize, Justin. I feel like it's easier to sit across from somebody and tell them I'm an alcoholic or I'm a drug addict. And people understand that when they say AA. When I tell somebody I'm a sex and love addict, codependency, they understand. But when I say sex and love addict, people are very like, whoa, like, what's that mean? And I have to give them, the whole story, or I give them examples of different types of sex addict or a love addict. And I do say recovery because in this program, we talk about one day at a time. So every day I wake up and I ask God to direct my thinking, and I want to be in alignment, and I don't want to act out, and I don't want to do all the things I used to do that made my life unmanageable. But I do know that I'm an addict, and I always will be an addict. And the best thing that I do for myself is to not put myself in positions to act out, which I still know that I'm capable of doing, because my self-will is here on this shoulder, and then God's will is over here. And there's days that I know I'm not supposed to be doing something, and I still want to do it because I've been doing that since age 12 and I'm 49 now. And so it's rewiring and just trying to remember every day is a new day. I get to make the right choices. But if I don't make the right choices, it doesn't make me unlovable, and it doesn't make me, a bad human. I get to reset each night.
I love that. And I love the analogy of self-will on one shoulder and God's will on the other. And I one of my favorite movies, Emperor's New Groove, a Disney animated movie. You got bad Kronk and good Kronk on the shoulder, and bad Kronk's doing one-armed push-ups, handstand push-ups. And good Kronk's saying, no, he's got a point there. My addict on that self-will shoulder is doing push-ups all the time, just waiting to try and for a weak moment. And good stuff. I appreciate that. All right, let's get to a couple of questions that have come in. We've got a question from Ryan from the live audience. Ryan says, thank you so much for your humble share. Can you talk a bit more about A, what helped you to be open to God when you started out so resentful towards God? And B, what the process was like in having an attitude or belief shift to actually letting God in?
So for me, I was raised Catholic, and I remember being told all the time that I had to fear God and that God was always watching me. And so it just didn't sit well with me. And I was forced to go to church too. So it wasn't something that just came naturally to me to believe in a God. And so to answer the question, I guess the shift for me was when I realized that there was something that was more loving and bigger and powerful than me, and that God will love me no matter what I do. I could mess up a million times and God is still going to be there. I always like the analogy of his arms open, waiting to embrace me. And that's such a beautiful feeling, to have that unconditional love from somebody. Because as humans, we judge each other, we judge ourselves harshly, and God doesn't do that. And so that just for me, I started realizing that I know that I am love. And just because I used to have when my marriage ended, because that person left, I thought that they took that love with them and that I didn't have any love left. And now I realize that all the love I need is inside of me, and it always will be. And then that's when I started realizing that God just loves you and accepts you for who you are and wants the best for you. Even when things don't go according to what I want, what Lenette wants, I know that he knows best. And just having that acceptance, that's what I have to do every day. Even when I've worked jobs I didn't like, I'd have to reset and say that I have to have acceptance. This is right now, and the next, and then I will do the next thing.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I want to go follow up on that just a little bit. You mentioned, hey, I am loved by this perfect loving being, entity, force out there that loves me perfectly. How has God showed you love today in your life to make you know, hey, I am loved and I am lovable?
I'm going to say, first of all, by putting this program back in my life, and by the people that I have been able to meet through this program. And just even when I look at my life and think, this is not what I wanted, I'm still grateful for everything that I have. I have wants, but God gives me everything I need. And when I have that acceptance, that is when it just all comes together for me. Yeah. And like, yeah, just like in general, the people that God has put in my life and the people he's removed. That's how I know.
Oh, I love how you added in then and the people that have been removed. I think that's a really powerful concept. I always think of love as something added upon. But addition can come by subtraction of negative things. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. A reminder to our live audience, if you have a question for Lenette, please type them in the Q&A link at the bottom of your Zoom window. Looks like two speech bubbles over the top of each other. And we will get to that. All right. You mentioned a couple of meetings ago, we had somebody who shared a little bit about just mentioned briefly sexual anorexia. And you mentioned I think it was the 11th principle from the SLAA characteristics that was about sexual anorexia. And someone from the live audience then sent me a private message. What does that mean? So tell me, what does that mean so that that question can be answered from a couple of meetings ago?
Absolutely. I even stated in my share that after my last divorce that I took about a year and 4 months for myself. I didn't date. I was celibate, but I wasn't doing any work except for, I was doing meditation and yoga and different like Reiki, energy healing, but I wasn't doing any 12-step work. So in my brain, I thought, I'm not having sex with anybody. I'm not going on dating sites. I'm recovered. I'm a recovered sex addict. And what anorexia means is that you just go from one extreme to the other. You go from engaging and being very sexual with people to retreating in your celibate. And so it's like anorexic. It's the complete opposite. And when you're doing that and you're not doing the work, it's not helping anybody. And then you just go right back, because that's what I did. I went right back to my old patterns when I explored dating, because I kept thinking, oh no, I didn't have sex for over a year and 4 months and didn't go on dating sites. I'm cured. And no, I came back and it was like, oh no, it's still there.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And it's so funny because as soon as I asked that question, another one came in on sexual anorexia. So I'll ask a couple of these follow-up questions on that from an anonymous attendee from our audience. Is it harder or impossible to achieve a separation sex from love or from intimacy if you are a codependent? Is the first part of that. And was it hard for you to understand God's sexual ideals for you? And how did you finally achieve clarity on this?
Okay. So the first one, can you repeat that, Justin?
Yeah. The first question was, is it harder or impossible to achieve a separation sex from love to separate sex from love or from intimacy if you are a codependent?
Okay, so what would come up for me is, as like I'd stated, as a child, I didn't get the like the emotional connection and love from my mom or my dad. And so for me, I felt very invisible and not seen, and I didn't feel loved. So once I started acting out sexually, I was very young. I was like 12. And I remember getting the attention from boys. I thought that sex was love. So what I've had to do now is realize that just because I have an attraction to somebody does not mean this is love. And then for the codependency, and like I said, it shows up different when I'm married or when I'm in a committed relationship. It shifts just like that person is my higher power. I don't care about like when I'm single. I don't care about the validation. I don't care about all those things. I care about you, and you are my higher power. And so I have not been in a relationship since my divorce in 2019. I have dated. And of course, I have had setbacks even in dating, and I've had to reassess my program and reassess how I'm showing up. And so definitely, it's still a learning curve for me, honestly. I feel like it will be like this the rest of my life, that I have to take things slow. I have to have boundaries, And I have to be able to communicate that also to a person that I'm dating. And if they're not on board with it, then I know that they're not meant to be in my life. And that's where the God removes people from my life comes. And I used to get really sad about that if I spoke my truth and somebody would leave, it devastated me. And now I know that they're not in alignment and that I get to have somebody in my life that understands me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And the second part of that, do you feel you addressed the second part of that question, or do you want me to redo that?
If you can read it again.
Yeah, the second part of that question, was it hard for you to understand God's sexual ideals for you? And how did you finally achieve clarity on this? Or are you still working on that?
I am still working on that. I did, though. I remember even the first time I was sexually active, I felt this amount of guilt and shame. And it was just interesting to look back at how I showed up, just being like acting out sexually, even as an adult. In the moment, didn't care. I was getting high. And then afterwards is when I would have this feeling of shame and regret and like disappointment. And then I remember thinking like, God must like think I'm horrible, must think he must hate me. That's exactly what I thought. And so now I still am working through it. And I am currently dating right now. And it's been interesting and how quickly I am stepping away from people now versus ignoring the red flag and being like, it's okay. And then getting in 2 months later and being like, what did I do? So I remove people quickly now versus how I used to ignore and turn a blind eye.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think that kind of goes into this next question from another anonymous attendee. This person asks, is it possible to reestablish a healthy relationship with the same partner after displaying codependent tendencies? If so, what are some healthy options to build a healthy relationship?
I would say yes, you would be able to rebuild. I have not been able to do that. I don't speak to my last ex-husband. And then I have a relationship with my son's dad because we have a child together. But with the last marriage, we don't talk. So I'm not sure about, how I would do that. But I do believe that you can, as long as both people are working on themselves. If one person is doing work and the other person is not, that other person is going to resist, dig their heels in, be upset that you're changing and that you're setting boundaries. And it depends on who is the codependent, but I do believe that two people can definitely reestablish like a relationship, but I believe that there has to be work done on each part and together.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Let's talk a little bit step 10 here. Lenette, you talked about 2 ways that you work your step 10. Let's kind of do a dry run of one of those. If you have an example from the last day or two of a step 10 that you've either worked or is brewing right now, let's kind of do that 2-column, my will, God's will type thing and talk through it.
I meant to bring my notebook over here. Can I step up and
absolutely
grab it?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm just gonna grab it really quick.
Okay.
So I'm just going to go, let's see. I'm just going to find a random one that I had done. So like I said, like the self-will. So one of them was resentment. And then I wrote out for not having extra money. Then God's will is forgiveness for myself. Another self-will is envy that other people have their lives together. God's will is contentment. Another one was greed, wanting money. God's will, generosity. Another one, fear of being alone. God's will, having faith. So that's just how I counteract them. And sometimes I'll even write out a paragraph if I feel I need to. But I usually will write like I did the resentment, and then I put my resentment is not having extra money. So I just like to identify usually what is coming up, why I'm having the resentment, why I'm having the envy, why I'm having all those feelings.
Yeah. And I love that. So often I have that same envy. Hey, why is everybody else's life so together and mine's just a disaster? But when I get to know people, I realize, man, they are a mess just like me.
That's
So
exactly what I was going to say, is that when I like look at other people and then you get to know them, you're like, it's not to be mean, but you're like, yes, you're not normal.
exactly. And I'm sure glad I don't carry your weight that you're carrying. I'd rather have my own.
Absolutely.
Uh, good stuff. Good stuff. All right. So couple other things that I have, and if a reminder to our live audience, if you have questions for Lenette, please type them in the Q&A link. You mentioned that after step 12, we're not done. I haven't graduated. I recently had this image in my mind, and I talked to somebody about it because it was so powerful to me. When I finish in quotation marks step 12, I'm not getting a graduation hat. I'm getting a hard hat to get to work.
Absolutely.
That's when the work happens. What's your experience with the difference between, hey, graduation versus getting to work?
Well, like I'd mentioned, I honestly, because when I went around the first time and I got to step 2, and I was like, and we did it differently when I was in California. She gave me like 12 questions and then had me answer all of them. And then I would sit with her and read them to her. And then she would decide if I could move on to step whatever. And I remember feeling very like it wasn't my program. And that she wasn't just leading me through the steps, she was like controlling me through the steps. So it was a very different experience. So what I liked about this one was we worked through the big book, we had the workbook, and we were able to go at our own pace. And I was lucky. My sponsor, I said I want to do a step a week. And then there were some times it did get delayed because of like either schedule changes for her or for myself. But I honestly did not know the work that went into step work. You can read them and be like, oh, cool. I make a list of a moral inventory, or I make amends to people. Cool. I'm done. I said, I'm sorry. And, and like our beloved Nikki always says, like, words are useless. It's actions, and it's how you show up for people. But my experience has been that I did jump right into sponsoring, and I'm going to tell you, I was scared. But then when you start working with people, it is beautiful to go through the steps again and to be able to hold that space for people and hear their story, and to be that like trusted like servant and source of support for somebody. So it's been beautiful for me. And I am actually looking for some sponsees right now because I don't have any. So, I'm available for sponsorship.
Floodgates may be opening up here. That's awesome. Thank you, Lenette. And I think I've shared this before in this meeting. I remember when I first graduated from step 12, my sponsor said, all right, it's time for you to get to work and start sponsoring. And I balked at that. I was like, I'm not ready for that. And he goes, well, congratulations. You just worked an 11-step program. Good luck staying sober. And I was like, whoa. But working with others, I have so many times I've experienced words coming out of my mouth to my sponsee that are not my words. There's no way that kind of wisdom ever came out of my mouth, and definitely there's a higher power working in that makes it so I can't mess them up any worse than they already are. So
yeah. And even if like when I'm not sponsoring, it's so interesting. I will in the morning ask God to like show me how to be of service. And I tell you that in that day, and like as the day goes on, I will get like people outreaching, needing just even a text or sending a voice note to share. So that is like what is beautiful. Or even when I need outreach and I reach out to somebody and they're like, they always say to me like, oh my gosh, I needed this too. And that's the beauty of the service, is when we think that we're in a space, when we do service with others and do outreach or sponsor, they're helping us just as much as we're helping them.
Awesome. And we've already got 2 people that have said, I want you as my sponsor. So those of you, please send an email to RECO12pod@gmail.com. I will connect you with Lenette so you guys can have that conversation and see if that'll work out. So RECO12pod@gmail.com. Send an email. I'll get you connected. Awesome. Okay. A couple more questions have come in from Sam. So is your step 10 basically working a condensed steps 1 through 9 every day?
Yes, it is. And that's what I'm saying. It is so amazing when you don't know the 12 steps and you start doing them, you kind of go, oh no, I'm doing the steps every day. It's just absolutely, because like I said, I wake up every day and I have to be admit that I'm powerless over this. And then I move forward and I say, yes, I have a God, or your God of understanding, that I rely on to keep me in alignment. And, the third step is to turn it over and know that you're not in control of your life. And that is hard to do. But absolutely, I do feel like every day I'm working, all my steps, all of the steps, not even just 1 through 9. It's all of them, because step 11, prayer and meditation, and then 12, service.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I have that same experience. Thank you. All right. Another anonymous attendee says, thank you for your open, honest, and brave share. Now that you have done and are doing the work and have tools available, do you find that you are open to new healthy relationships, or do you still have fear and apprehension towards opening yourself up to future loving relationships?
I would say 2 months ago, I was still very closed off. And what came up for me was, I've done all this work, and then now I have to try to interact with somebody. And what has changed now is that I trust that God is going to guide me in the right direction, and will bring people into my life that I can learn from. They can learn from me. And like I said, if they are not in alignment, God will remove them for me. So yes, to answer, I am open now. I definitely am open to having a relationship in the future with somebody.
Love it. And that's a big step to take. I was recently talking to somebody else who was really fearful about any sort of interaction with anybody in their addiction. And I'm so grateful for the promise in the big book, the principle in the big book, that my main purpose, my main reason for existing in recovery is to be of maximum service to God and my fellows. And I can't be of maximum service to God and my fellows without being involved with them, and being involved with them doesn't mean inappropriate relationships. It just means I'm out, as once again, as our Nikki says, life is a trigger. I have to live. I have to be out in the world. But I have to learn how to do it in a healthy way. And that's what these steps are about, and practicing these principles in all our affairs, as it says,
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much. Any thoughts on that I just shared with you?
Oh,
on life as a trigger.
I'm
you
sorry.
have any thoughts on that? Sorry about that.
On life as what?
Life is a trigger, or
well, it's interesting you say that, because there's so much talk about triggers, and usually when a trigger happens, it's not what is happening at that time. It's something that is embedded deep in us in that trauma. So I always find when I feel triggered, to do what we all say in program is to pause and not react, because you would be reacting to something that has nothing to do with what is actually happening, if that makes sense. Just like if somebody gets angry that you didn't take the trash out, and they freak out over it, it's really not about the trash being taken out. It's about them probably feeling like they do everything around the house and you don't contribute. And so for a trigger, definitely. And I do find myself still being triggered with certain things pertaining to relationships, and especially romantic relationships. But I'm finding that I'm setting, it's not even, I don't want to say boundaries. It's just being respectful of my body and of my mind and my heart, and knowing that it takes time to build friendship and to get to know somebody. before I have to be intimate or sexual with them. Because that was what I did first. Let's be intimate and sexual and then get to know them. And then guess what? I didn't like them.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for sharing that experience and those insights there. One of the things that you mentioned up front was that, fear almost caused you to say, I'm out. I'm not going to do this. First of all, I want to thank you for surrendering that fear, for abandoning that fear and pressing through to join us with us today, because what you've shared has been very valuable. But two, how do you, it sounds like you've got lots of practice in working through these fears, and fear is a big paralyzer for so many, myself included. How do you have like a process that you go through to abandon that fear, to surrender that fear, or to push through that fear?
I had a lady I worked with. She was an energy healer, like Reiki energy. And I remember her telling me that fear and excitement have the same vibration. It's just how you label it. And so it was interesting, like 2 weeks ago, when you like confirmed, or whenever you confirmed last, like, hey, we're still on, I was like, oh my God, like it's coming up. And then I was in a place where my addict kept telling me, you're not ready. You're not ready. And I was like, why am I not ready? Like I was having this dialogue, like I was a crazy person. And then I sat with it and I was like, no, you know what? This was actually when I first started program back, I made a list of goals that I wanted to do. And one of them was definitely lead a meeting, like be a lead share. I've done that like 3 times already. And one of them was to be on a podcast one day. And so I looked back at my goals and I was like, no, you don't let fear like step in and take away something from you. Because I've done it so many times in the past in my life. Like I backed out of doing like training for being a doula, a birth doula, because I was scared. So that's something that I might explore again down the road. But yeah, I sit with God and I sit with myself and just try to see what is really the root of it. And for me, it's being seen. And there's nothing wrong with being seen, but it's uncomfortable for me to be like in the spotlight.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And it looks like it triggered a question or two here, but I love that fear and excitement on the same vibration. And I love, hey, check on being a lead share, check on a podcast. What's the next goal that you have that has not yet been achieved?
I have to look at that list again. I have to look.
Okay. Well, awesome. So the question that came in on the fear and excitement vibration, Sam says, wow, fear and excitement have the same vibration. That really struck me. I have so many fears that almost paralyze me, but they are very fulfilling when I see them through. How do you make the transition from fear to excitement? I need that.
Well, another thing that I found helpful is you have to regulate your nervous system as well, because our nervous system can get deregulated. And that's when you are in that flight or fight mode, and you think like the big mammoth is chasing you when we don't need that anymore. Like, we know how to like survive now. I know on YouTube, they have them. It's called emotional freedom technique. And it is a tapping on certain parts of your body. And you say, like the one that I like to do, you tap like your forehead, you tap under your nose, your chin, and your chest. And the whole time you're doing this, you say, I'm safe in my body. I'm safe in my body. And that has helped me to move through even the fear of flying. Because I used to be, every time I got on an airplane, I thought I was going to die. Now I can get on an airplane because of EFT. So that is a tool I use. And also just sitting in the fear and, like I said, sitting with God or your higher power, whatever you believe in, to just get that clarity, because it'll come.
Love it. And I will be putting all of these resources that you've mentioned in the show notes of the podcast. So if you missed any of these things, don't worry about it. I'll find links. I'll put them in there. You can link to them directly from the show notes in the podcast. Lenette, before we close up, do you have any final words of wisdom for us?
You know what? I think that I have said all that I need to say. I'm grateful though. I really appreciate this opportunity to be here. And I'm really happy that I pushed past my fear and that, this sounds crazy sometimes, but I am actually grateful that I am an addict. I'm a grateful addict because then it brought me here.
Amen. Amen. Thanks again, Lenette. That was a great RECO12 weekly speaker meeting. If we didn't get to any questions that you had out there, if you didn't have the time or take the opportunity, maybe fear froze you from asking a question, please consider joining our WhatsApp community by sending an email to RECO12pod@gmail.com and joining our community there and ask questions there, answer other questions that may come up. And if you are inspired and want to share something of your insights in a 12-step type share, please consider doing that at RECO12 Shares. At the SpeakPipe link that is in the chat here, it'll be in the show notes. Record a 2 to 4 minute share there. If you don't want to do it there, do it in your next 12-step meeting that you're in. Share what you're learning, because for me, if I'm not verbalizing things that I'm learning and then putting them into action, it's not sticking. I'm going to forget all about it, and it's not going to do me or anybody else any good. But when I share it, it does me and maybe somebody else some good. All right. If you have not yet rated and reviewed the podcast in Apple Podcasts, please go do so now. It's a great way to work our step 12 and sharing this message with others. It makes RECO12 more visible to others. I invite the audience to come back next week when we will be hearing from another RECO12 first-time speaker, Anita H., whose topic will be staying strong through the craving. We're just really excited about Anita being a first-time speaker next week. I'm excited to hear from her experience, strength, and hope. Now let's launch off into the rest of our day with the set-aside prayer. Lenette, are you ready to say that for us?
Yes, let me pull it up. Right. God, today help me set aside everything I think I know about you, everything I think I know about myself, everything I think I know about others, and everything I think I know about my own recovery, so I may have an open mind and new experience with all these things. Please help me see the truth.
Thank you so much. There's one who has all power. That one is God. May you find God now and keep coming back, guys. Let's trudge this happy road together. It's worth it.
Standing still a moment, carving out this time, reflecting on the landscape of this life of mine. Peaks too high to conquer, streams too wide to cross, troughs too deep to walk through without incurring loss. Yet here I am, still standing tall, despite the rough terrain. One like me survived the storms and walked through wind and rain. Still standing, I will fight the good fight, still searching for glimmers of light, feet still on the ground. I can still be found, standing still.
My wings are torn and tattered, but I know I still